Bhagwan Shri Yogi Ramsuratkumar ki Jai. Sarvam Yogi Ramsuratkumararpanamastu. Our endless pranams, our endless grateful pranams to the lotus feet of Bhagwan for having blessed us with this session. Let us hope and pray that we should be able to do the ceaseless chanting by the grace of Bhagwan. This is the only aim of life, remembrance of God. Remembering the name is remembering God, and remembering the name is living in God. Now we shall see a very beautiful story of Mary Angelon, Mary Young Angelon, a devotee of Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar from Arizona, a disciple of Sri Lee Lozovic, an ardent devotee of Bhagwan. In 2001, February, on the 20th, early morning, Bhagwan attained Mahasamadhi. He left his mortal coil behind, yet with a promise that he would do better work, more active work, without this body. So, of course, he plunged thousands of his devotees into a deep ocean of grief. What could we do? What could anybody do? When Bhagwan had decided, there was nothing else to do. In 2002, Sri Lee Lozovic, with a group of his students, had come to the ashram, and Mary Young was one of them. At the time, she became very, very busy with interviews from varied people who had association with Bhagwan in one way or the other. Many, many, many interviews. And when she returned home, Arizona, one day Sri Lee Lozovic called her and said, "Look, a book on Yogi Ramsuratkumar must be published in 4 months." A command that shocked her, because the project seemed heavy, immense. And here her Gurunath was saying, only 4 months. Yet, she meekly said, yes, yes, it will be done. It could be done only by the grace of Bhagwan, by the grace of her Guru. She says in the article, there were interviews and interviews and interviews for those people to transcribe and then edit and then fit them in the right places in the frame of the book, which was no easy task, very time-consuming and laborious. And yet, she says, where Yogi Ramsuratkumar was concerned, she was completely immersed in him, so much so everything else paled into insignificance. That was the grace. Bhagwan simply drew her into himself, into his infinite and finite glory. She says that she was so absorbed in the task by the grace of Bhagwan, which she trusted, that she began to write 12 hours, sometimes 14 hours, sometimes 16 hours, and sometimes 18 hours. Amazing. But that's how Bhagwan drew her into him completely. And one day, one morning, January 2003, she wanted to take a little fresh breath. She left her desk, made a visit with her friend, and they fell into a conversation. But you see, Mary Young was so preoccupied with Bhagwan and his glory, and all that material she had to put into the book, which was anyway flowing spontaneously to her by his grace. She cut the conversation short, without knowing, without even being aware that she was doing it, saying that she had to get back to the work of the Garden of Delight. She was surprised herself that such a word should come out, such a phrase should come out of her mouth spontaneously. It was no preconceived phrase. It just fell out of her mouth in divine spontaneity. And she herself was taken aback. What did I say? The work. She began to think of the project as entering the Garden of Delight, being in the Garden of Delight. And the whole thing became the Leela in the Garden of Delight. So she was back to work, very brisk. And the same day, after so much of work, she met the lady who typed Caleb Waglington's the journal notes. And she had something very precious to share with Mary Young. She said, "Look, I've been wanting to say this. 2 years back, probably it was 2001, this lady had a dream. In that dream, she found herself standing right in the middle of the feasting hall, and there were people all around, very busy with the food stuff, with the conversations. And suddenly, she found Yogi Ramsuratkumar standing there in the aisle between the two tables. On the tables, there was much food for everyone, and people were busy around that. And between the two tables in the aisle, she found Yogi Ramsuratkumar standing and smiling. Naturally, she was startled. And then she looked around. Everybody was oblivious to the presence of Yogi Ramsuratkumar. Amazing again. How could that be? Here is Yogi Ramsuratkumar, our God and Lord, who has recently taken Samadhi, Mahasamadhi, and he is here in flesh and blood, standing right over there, smiling. She rushed to him and said, Swami, just see, these people are oblivious of your presence. They go about as though they have not seen you. Bhagwan smiled and said, yes, it's not easy to see me. I'm not seen by all the people, only by a rare few. And then he said, good that you could see me. Now come with me. Smiling, he took her to the end of that feasting hall, and there was a door. He opened it, and out there, it was a beautiful garden, full of light, natural air, fresh, pure air and light. And there were flowers and flowers. It was like a valley of flowers, everywhere, of every color, every size, every texture. A profusion of colors, profusion of flowers. And there were some butterflies, naturally. And the whole place was blissful. It was as though she was suddenly transported into another realm, a realm of bliss. And then Yogi Ramsuratkumar Bhagwan spoke. He was just going about touching those flowers with the wonder, a childlike innocence and wonder. You see this? How beautiful? You see that? How beautiful? Are you able to smell this? See how beautiful they smell? This is the garden of delight. And he said to her, do you know, this is my teaching. You see here how everything looks so beautiful, so blissful. This is my teaching, the garden of delight. And then he disappeared. So when this lady, the typist, so graciously typed all that Caleb Adlington had to say while he wrote the book. Now, it was Mary Young's turn to be surprised, to be overwhelmed. Only that morning, she had mentioned the very word. Rather, it came out of her, a spontaneous outflow. And here, in the evening, this lady is coming and saying the very same word, coming out of Bhagwan. And what was more, Bhagwan was saying, this is my teaching, the garden of delight. She was stunned, overwhelmed, of course, because the book that she was writing, full of the grandeur of Bhagwan's personality, Bhagwan's leelas, Bhagwan's spontaneous, ever-fresh grace. There was such beauty, such sweetness in her whole work, and she was getting lost in it. That is why the word came out of her spontaneously, I have to get back to the work of the Garden of Delight. This is Yogi Ramsuratkumar in a nutshell. The sweetness, the joy, the peace, the wonder, the bliss. She was completely lost in the book. Yet, in the corner of her mind, she could not help thinking, what a beautiful work it is. It couldn't be called work. It's a beautiful tapas for her. One that was so absorbing, taking her into the depths of her being. If only she could have more time, she could do the editing much better, twice, thrice, so that there wouldn't be any mistakes at all. Such a huge, mammoth work, a heavy volume. Why would Mr. Lee say, in 4 months it should be published? She could not help asking this question. But all the same, she soon forgot it and was getting lost again in the glory of Yogi Ramsuratkumar. And then one day, after her heavy work, she wanted a break. It was morning, so she left her desk, went upstairs, had her breakfast, and as she was taking her breath, she was looking upon that living area which was filled with sunlight. And suddenly, amazingly, she saw Yogi Ramsuratkumar standing there. Her Lord and God, Bhagwan, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, was standing there in flesh and blood. He was smiling. Just imagine. Now, of course, she rushed to him. He was still smiling. And then he said, you know what he said? He said, you get back to work, Mary. He gave her the beautiful gift of his presence, his narration, and then he said, now you get back to work. And suddenly it flashed again, because she whispered, yes, yes. And then in a flash she understood. It was not Mr. Lee who said that you should publish a book in 4 months. It was Yogi Ramsuratkumar who was behind him. It was his command. Just to let her know, it is I behind Mr. Lee speaking those words. You have to get back to work. This is very typical of Bhagwan, because in the ashram projects also it happened very often. He would give some work and a deadline. It would be pretty close to the start. And then sometimes people had to work, Mani had to work even in the nights with all those people. But somehow, always, he managed it. And Shimani would always say, when Bhagwan gives some work and mentions the deadline, it could only mean it is possible. And it would be done. All by His grace. We are mere instruments. This is what Mary Young also felt, that it was his command, it was his style of functioning, and it just as well, he said, because these divine projects have to be done spontaneously and within time. Otherwise, it would be endless. Now, we'll come back to the Garden of Delight. Didn't he say, "This is my teaching"? Mary remembered a quote of Bhagwan. Bhagwan, when we read Agaram Jayaraman's diary, you come across this often. In places, Bhagwan would say, when you look at everything around with your intellect, then every difference between one thing and the other, between one man and the other, every difference will come out and you will be able to see only differences. Something is good, something is bad, someone is beautiful, someone is ugly, something is small, something is big. All the difference, every difference would present itself before you. And you would see only the differences. But once you develop love for Lord Krishna, you develop love for my Father, this love takes over completely, and after that, you see only my Father everywhere. You see only Lord Krishna's beauty in everything, in everyone. There will be no differences at all. This is the magic of love. This is the magic of devotion to the Lord, where all differences would dissolve, leaving only the powerful divine beauty behind. Because everything in nature is only an expression of the divine. It is the one divine that has become the many. Assumed every name and form and plays every role. So she remembered this beautiful quote of Bhagwan. She realized the truth of it. She understood to make one's life a garden of delight, one has to develop this love. She says her friend Shane, a Buddhist, often used to remark that after a master attains Mahasamadhi, he becomes more and more vivid in every aspect of creation, which is very true, which has been my experience too. Every little thing around, you will be able to see his beauty, his gestures. It will be amazing. We do not even know how we connect, but we do, and we see his secret gaze behind everything, his secret smile, and the ever-flowing joy of living. So this is the teaching that she learned. If we develop, if we practice this love for God, this love for our Guru, this love for our Ishtadevta, then slowly, all differences would dissolve, leaving behind only a garden of pure delight. And everything in this garden will be a delightful Leela of the Lord. What a great message. The garden of delight. Now that delight, the divine delight, is here in front of us. The bundle of bliss and love and grace in the form that's very familiar to all of us, very dear to all of us. And we shall submit our today's prayer. However, today's world is no garden of delight. It is the other extreme. There is only death and destruction and violence. Only Bhagwan's grace can help us develop this love that he speaks of and make this world a garden of delight. Right at this moment it seems far, far away, a remote chance, but surely the divine ways are mysterious. You would never know. When he chooses, overnight everything would change. In a fraction of a second, the whole facade would change. So we shall appeal to the generosity, the compassion, the love that he was always talking about. Bhagwan, we beg you again and again and again, a million times, a billion times, a zillion times, for your immediate divine intervention to free the entire humanity from the clutches of this dreadful virus and bring back normalcy in every aspect of life, but a normalcy based on human values, based on love and universal brotherhood, so that the new life would be a new strength, new vision of harmonious coexistence. Bhagwan, we beg you to root out the fear, the panic from the hearts of people, arrest the rapid spread of the disease, enter those medicines so that the entire crowd of the viruses could be killed once for all. And we beg you again for that bestowal of grace that would reach out to all those distressed and suffering for lack of facilities and medication. Please provide the needful so that they get well soon and return home safe. And all those great warriors, every day we are mentioning, the brave soldiers of God's world, they are tapaswins. They are laboring hard day and night at the very risk of their lives in order to save other lives. Bhagwan, please give them protection and all-round welfare. We also beg you for a lift to economy, and above all, please bless us with constant remembrance of your name. Only this can turn all the sorrow and violence into joy and harmony, the chaos into order. We beg you, Bhagwan, give us the right attitude, the attitude of being willing instruments in your hands. grateful instruments in your hands to go about our lives as an offering to you. And finally, that supreme blessing which would purify us and remove even the last trace of selfishness, so that the spring of God's love would flow into us, and that we would be able to see only your presence, your beauty, your delight, your garden of delight in everything, everywhere. Jai Yogi Ramsuratkumar.
Yogi Ramsuratkumar.